Hello, family. Welcome back to Landline, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I'm your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. So, everything you need to know about Kamala Harris's new VP pick, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. He won the Veep Stakes, y'all. It is Tim Walz from Minnesota. So, look, initial takes are coming in. I gotta say, I think AOC said it best. The Dems are in a disconcerting state of array. That is not an oft used word. We usually just stick to the disarray, but no, they are in a state of array, which is very odd when it comes to the Dems. This is undeniably a good choice. Tim Walz is a good choice, despite the fact that Josh Shapiro seemed like he was the shoe-in for the job. So before we get into Walz, let's figure out why Josh Shapiro was not the guy. It was seemingly one and done. So what did he do? What did he do? Okay, so for those of you who need a little re-up, Josh Shapiro is the Pennsylvania governor, and he's about 51. He's beloved in that state. I mean, they're obsessed with him. They're so obsessed with him that during a pro-Harris rally, everybody in that there were tons of people at this particular rally. They all started chanting for Shapiro to be the VP pick. And let me tell you about an alpha, okay? Let me tell you about an AKA girl. Let me tell you about a girl whose hair is always laid like that. You don't tell somebody like that what to do, despite the fact that she was a little goon in her little beige suits, not making a damn lick of sense for the past 4 years. There's somebody there. The cloak is off. Her team did not love the fact that she was kind of being strong-armed into it. Now, that might be enough, but that's not the thing that we care about, is it? What we cared about is Josh Shapiro's very pro-Israel stance and to what extent he was going to bend, if at all, on that. So I gotta say, I think that was a factor. The other thing that I've read about across the Washington Post, AP, which is Associated Press, across the New York Times, et cetera, was they didn't really hit it off on a professional kind of personality level, right? So I want to believe that this is undeniably a good thing because Kamala Harris has already been more critical of Israel than the Biden administration ever was. So the implication here is that this is a step in the right direction. To not choose Josh Shapiro, knowing that he's so pro-Israel, suggests that the Harris campaign and her team is paying closer attention to lefties, to millennials, to Gen Z, and every other person with some sense and some heart that says, this is wrong. The Biden administration's stance on Gaza and Palestine is wrong. Just blanket spending for Israel's many-fold war, first and foremost against the Palestinian peoples, is wrong. So this, to me, seems like a step in the good direction, in the right direction. And I got to tell you, AOC also said that it's a rare thing when somebody like her and Manchin are on the same side of things. He is also supportive of Walz. So you got to ask yourself, is this good for lefties? So who is Tim Walz? So he's a guy across many, many articles that's been described as someone who has plucky dad vibes, folksy, often jovial. He's 60 years old. He's a former school teacher. That alone is something that interests me. For any teachers out there, mad love to you. It's the most noble profession, the most undervalued, underappreciated professions out there, right alongside single motherhood and motherhood in general. So I just want to say shout out to my teachers. That's who this guy is. This is how he's been described. He's a rare breed in Congress, right? He's a Democrat from the rural Midwest. For more than a decade, Walz has represented Minnesota's 1st district, so that's the southern part of the state. He was a top Democrat on the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. So this is a guy who's definitely, served some time in the military. He was supportive of funding to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He also voted for the Affordable Care Act and voted against restricting federal funding for abortion. So when we think about it, did I just say abortion? Abortion. He actually is a mixed bag. But, and I'm pretty sure I just said bag the way Canadians do. Shout out to my Canadians out there, whatever. I'm sorry I can't say bog like Americans. I'll work on it, I promise. So he really very much is a mixed bag, but he has a pretty decent progressive record in his state. We'll get into that. Here are some pop cult things that I found very interesting about Mr. Walz. So for my Swifties out there, he has made the state a bastion of liberal policy, and this year he was one of the few states to protect fans who were buying tickets online for Taylor Swift concerts and other live events. So there was a lot of gouging that was happening, a lot of people getting cheated out of tickets, a lot of skyrocketed prices. He was holding it down for the Swifties, so there's that. I came across Walz when I saw a video of him where he adorably and ferociously used pie as an allegory for rights and equality, where he was just in his little t-shirt and his little belly and his little cute face, and he was all like, it's not a pie. Equality is not a pie where some people get some and then there's not enough for everybody else. And everybody was like, yes. And I was like, yeah, okay. I like that. But it was his conviction that won me over, right? And if you're not sold on whether this guy is truly universally likable, he named a highway after Prince. After Prince. And he signed the bill in purple ink. Like, come on. Come on. In purple ink, yes. Back to his record, he's been successful in persuading Republican districts to rally behind him. This matters. When we say this is somebody who's liked and respected across the board, it's actually true. His kind of accessibility and his charm, but also there's kind of this like steel backbone under it. He's very persuasive. He comes across as an everyday guy. So one thing I find really interesting is, remember when we sort of talked about an episode or two ago, the fact that the Harris campaign started to call all those freaks on the other side weird. They're just weird. It was Walz who actually came up with that. And I don't know that he came up with it as a strategy on purpose, but I've been spending more time with it because I'm a big rhetoric guy. Love rhetoric, study rhetoric. I'm all about discourse and all about language and the power of it and what it says about us in this particular moment. So why is weird so good for attacking Trump, MAGA at large, JD Vance? Why has it upset them so much? Because they're very, very, very mad about it. And I figured out what it was. We've tried pretty much everything when it comes to criticizing, the whole MAGA campaign, all those bigots and weirdo white supremacists. But we use moralistic terms, right? We say things like they're deplorable. We call them racist. They don't actually care about those things. In fact, they find it funny that we have ethics and morals at all. And anytime that they can, take a knife and sort of twist it, they do. And in their minds, by co-opting terms like deplorable, by co-opting terms like racist, oh, guess I'm racist, while they're standing beside their one weirdo black dude who never fit into black spaces that they've now recruited and pay a bunch of money to just stand there and just smile, Tim. Anyway, the term weird works because there's no moral or ethical undertones. You're just fucking weird. And they simply lack the punkness and the riz required to make weird ironic. They can't do it. So they just say, I guess I'm weird. And we're just like, yeah, nigga, duh. Like you are. Like everything you're doing is weird. So it actually works. Here's his record as a governor. He's pushed through liberal policies in Minnesota, such as strengthening gun control. I find this one particularly interesting because this is a guy who's a hunter, but don't worry, my dear loving companions. He goes after turkeys and pheasants, and I don't, I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, and so, but the idea of a little just turkey just gobbling around its little innocent life and just getting plucked off, but I'll eat it. So I'm a person who is in contradiction, okay? I'll still eat it. So he does hunt, but it's small game and he likes his guns, but it also matters that he is for gun control and wants to expand gun control he's done it across the state. You can imagine that he'll do it across the nation as well. That's something that's important to the Harris campaign. He's expanded paid family leave and medical leave for Minnesota workers and provided free meals for public school students. You already know this is everything to me. This matters a whole bunch. I've read nothing but stories ever since we've seen paid family leave And we've seen family support weaken in this country, even under the Biden administration, because they not because Biden didn't support it, but because they simply lacked congressional power to see it through. It, I've read so many testimonies of people who talked about what a life change it was for them, how their quality of life increased with just a few $100s or a couple $1,000s a month. That matters. Oh no, the birth rate is plummeting, and oh no, what are we going to do? Let's force women back into the household. How about you just treat people like people and start by supporting the goddamn kids who are here already, dummies? Anyway, so that's something that he cares about. You might note that he is a VP, so his main enemy is going to be J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, who referred to women as childless cat ladies and attacks the fact that women don't have children, even as he says that he wants to eliminate access to IVF. Mr. Walz, Governor Walz, is pro-IVF, not only in theory, but from his personal story. So when it comes to in vitro fertilization, right, we know this is being targeted by conservative groups who say frozen embryos could be considered extrauterine children. It's like, you guys are weird. What a weird turn of phrase. Anyway, to conceive his daughter, Mr. Walz and his wife, Gwen, had gone through treatments for the procedure that stretched over 7 years. So this is a family that has struggled to have children and relied upon IVF to have a daughter. And I just think that that is so important in this particular moment. You know, we know where we know what side Jennifer Aniston's on with this one. This is hugely important. I am fond of the broad, and I just feel like any attack on people for what bodies they're in, or how their hair grows out of their head, or their skin color, or what they choose to wear on their head is just a bunch of bullshit. But the attack on IVF is particularly evil. Because it shows that they actually don't have any ethics and they don't have any moral codes. It's like, oh, if you guys are pro this, I'm going to be anti that. And it's like, okay, weirdo. So there are some questions about Mr. Walz, though, that I am deeply invested in. You know that the Democrats have taken a fairly hard line on immigration, and that is something that I care about deeply, that you care about deeply. We know that of late, the Democratic Party sounds a lot like Trump when it comes to immigration and getting hard on the border. So what I can tell you is that Walz has had a mixed kind of relationship to it. He initially, at different points in time in his political career, was a little bit harder on immigration, but he softened in the last several years. So currently, Mr. Walz says that he supports a pathway to citizenship for people brought to the United States as children, which is in line with the current administration's policies. And I want to be clear about this. The current administration's policies is simply not leftist enough. I don't expect miracles from the Democratic Party, but I also demand that they not sound like the Republican Party and these freakazoid, this GOP, this MAGA movement. If you sound like them in any way, if we sound like them in any way, you can't call yourself a progressive. You can't call yourself a liberal. Immigrants are being used as scapegoats. Asylum seekers are being used as scapegoats, even as our foreign policy destroys their homes and any sense of stability and any sense of consistency in their world. So I think it is an in that we have, right? It's an in that at least he says children born here should have a path to immigration. If we can move him, if he's there, then we can move him for people who are here having a path to immigration. The biggest question is Gaza. What is Governor Walz's position on Gaza? So on foreign policy, and keep in mind that he is a governor. He's a state governor, so he hasn't really required any kind of foreign policy analysis or to put out any kind of position on it. But on foreign policy, he's not spoken extensively about Gaza at all. And of course, we know this is one of the hardest and thorniest issues that the Biden administration faced because it was an absolute abdication of any kind of moral compass. But I'll say this, that Kamala Harris declined to run with Josh Shapiro and chose instead Walz suggests that they are aligned, at least, in criticizing Israel and criticizing its treatment of Palestinians. And I think we can push them really, really, really hard on ending the funding to Israel's relentless, endless war that we are funding, that we are backing, and that America supports. And I know I'm using the collective we here, but this is so we don't forget our responsibility in this moment. So, key points for us. I'm very glad we have someone sweet and friendly. I do. I love his stupid little face. He's just like, oh, I just love his stupid little face. But it matters more to me that we have a fighter that doesn't pull punches when it comes to fascism, that doesn't pull punches when it comes to Palestinians, and that doesn't pull punches when it comes to the white supremacists and the fight that we have here. It's about democracy right now, quality of life, and the foreign policy positions that benefit or devastate the people around the world and the world over. That's what matters here. So I'm having a little bit of fun and I'm playing with the little Walz stuff because he definitely is the absolute best pick. It does seem like Kamala Harris and the Democrats behind her actually want to win this thing for the first time, right? Our job is to ensure that the win aligns more with our political agenda than theirs. I simply don't trust theirs, Well, I think we have good reason not to. So she's coming out swinging. She's coming out hard. She chose Tim Walz, a guy who has a pretty good record when it comes to speaking and reaching across the table. And I'm not talking about with Republicans. Ew. I know he's going to have to do that, but like gross. But mainly Republican districts, which means he has a way of speaking to people that honestly, I mean, the way that America has become so incredibly polarized, it's disturbing, it's scary, but it's not as bad as the media, mainstream media, traditional news outlets would have us believe. When you can actually get past, when you don't reject people's pain, when you can embrace it and say, okay, but if you feel these things, what about these things? I'm not talking about the bigots. Like, no, they're so boring. Oh my God. But we need people who are willing and able to talk to folks who are considered across the board or across district lines or across political lines and say, this just makes sense. Hey, you should support this because this just makes sense. And he's got a great track record for that. So, what does Harris and her team intend to do with the guy? That's the other thing we need to worry about. So, we know that Kamala Harris and her campaign believe, and now together with this ticket, that they're going to aim for a statewide child tax credit and a paid leave program focused on helping the lower and middle class Americans. So, this is huge. A Harris administration would try to enact legislation like this on a national scale. That's what we need very, very badly right now. According to two people directly familiar with the vice president's decision-making team, in 2023, so that information came directly from her team. Why Walz helps is in 2023, he signed into law a bill that gave school children access to free meals, as I mentioned. So that happened last year. But it made Minnesota the fourth state in the nation to provide free meals. I just want to be clear, that's the fourth state in the nation. There's 51 or something? So 50? Oh, thank you. Oh, my God. I am a Canadian. Anyway, it sounds great, but then when you hold it in light of, I can't do math. 56. No, 46. Thank you. To 46, that is wild. Give kids free food. Give people food. What the hell? So, beyond economics, Mr. Walz also signed a bill in 2023 that codified the protections of Roe v. Wade. This is massive. So, he codified it in the state. It is protected. So, that means it's guaranteed a constitutional right to abortion. It's signed into law. And abortion rights are a cornerstone of Kamala Harris's advocacy work as a vice president and will continue so. So we know that they're aligned. I got to tell you, though, I'm seeing a lot of happiness, a lot of celebration, a lot of joy that matters. So regarding the Walz-Harris ticket, right, I'm happy about the momentum. It bodes well for beating Trump. But for the majority of us who were clear to the Democrats under Biden and everyone else, that blanket support of Israel, blanket uncritical support of Israel was a breaking point for those of us who wanted to support the Dems but simply could not. It's not so much a honeymoon feeling. No, we're more like the embittered, embattled people in a relationship of circumstance who are feeling that sensational and irresistible moment, that joy when a couples therapist agrees that you were in fact the one that was right. Yes. Yes. So please, for those of us who know that feeling, do scream into a pillow, "I told you so," in the next 24 hours while listening to Dashboard Confessional, because we are vindicated. Okay. Now, I think that's a good breakdown. I think we kind of get a sense of who Tim Walz is and what the Harris administration will do under him. Why don't we get on to the next and hit that voicemail and that voice box? Let's hear that question of the day.
Hey, Future, I have a question for you about your dog, Sula. I was wondering where she came from and how long you've had her and any fun details you'd like to share.
Oh my goodness. All right. This is actually one of my favorite questions. I can talk about Sula until I'm blue in the face. How did I? Okay. So one day, a friend of a friend messaged a friend and they said, "Hey, somebody left a puppy at a restaurant. He brought her in and said that she was the runt and then asked if anybody wanted her." They said no, but the person who owned the restaurant, who was a friend of a friend, was like, "Hey, just give me a second. I'm going to go grab my phone in the back. I'll be right, I'll be here in a second." While she went to grab her phone in the back, the guy left. And he left a 2-month-old baby puppy Roddy runt on the stool. So when the friend of a friend came back out, she was stuck with this little baby, and then everyone was like, "Who wants this Roddy puppy?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I want this Roddy puppy." So I got Sula as an abandoned little princess at 2 months old, and we've been through a lot together. She is so incredibly smart and so sweet. Her personality often feels like the opposite of mine. She is 7 now and is still like a puppy. Everyone still asks me how old she is because she's obnoxiously joyful. Like, just truly, everybody is her best friend. And I'm a little bit like, I guess, just the weird autistic kid in the corner until I'm not. But I'll say this. We went through, she is so smart and picked up on, I mean, this is the most unbelievably well behaved girl. But the trade off for that was 8 months of relentless, explosive diarrhea for no reason. Absolutely no reason. I took her to the vet so many times. I got so paranoid that I went to the vet. And the vet was like, "No, I promise you, there's nothing wrong with her." And I distinctly remember getting banned for a while because I said, "I don't remember her anus puckering this way." And I just, so, so the care of Sula, loving my dog, I am a little bit Caucasian inside. I realize that now. If you check my Google history, everyone else is like, "Oh my God, data breach." And I'm like, I don't need anyone to see my Google history because you will see things like how to rebuild trust after yelling at your dog because she pooped on your carpet. Like, that's, that's where we're at. She's only ever really done that once, you guys. I mean, she's truly an angel. She's my best friend forever, and I love her to pieces. And I hope that everyone gets to have a Sula in their life or come meet mine because honestly, she drives me nuts. She's always there, and I love her. She's like my shadow, or I'm hers at this point. I'm not really sure. Anyway, I was not a dog person. I was a cat person, and I love animals, but dogs are goofy as hell and nasty. They're so nasty. Just like you don't need to get that close to poop to know what's going on with whoever dealt it. But yeah, she's been an absolute joy in my life. She's accident prone, injury prone, and I am the person who learns how to do dog physiotherapy and stretches her out every day. And now she's about as limber as a gymnast. So, you know, that's my story of Sula. I love that question. Thank you so much for asking that. Yeah. So, with that, what a great breakdown, y'all. We did it. We handled the Walz thing. We handled the Harris ticket. Now, I can say thank you for listening to Landline. It means the world to me. You know, this show really is a labor of love. We are dropping new episodes on the daily. I think we're at 4 right now. We're going to keep increasing it. We're on Spotify and Apple, everywhere podcasts are. If you feel so moved, please drop us a voicemail question at landlinewithjfk@gmail.com. We definitely want to hear from you. Shout out to KR and the Landline team, which is really just us. And anyway, shout out to you, the listeners, who make this all possible. Peace and love.